following program was made possible by a grant from the Pew Charitable Trusts.
The minimum monthly payments due, APR 22.65% for best rate, 24.65% for standard rate. Minimum finance charge 50 cents. See cardholder agreement for details. Offer ends Sunday.
There's nothing physically wrong with you.
Then why do I feel so awful, so bloated and sluggish? Nothing gives me joy anymore. Not the house, the car, the clothes, the raise. Nothing. Doctor, I'm frightened. Well, do something. Can't you give me a pill?
There's no pill for what's wrong with you. I'm afraid you're suffering from affluenza.
Oh, my God. Why me? Is it fatal?
It's catastrophic. It's the new epidemic.
Well, there is a cure, isn't there?
Possibly.
Affluenza is a major disease. There's no question about it.
And many people suffer from it, but very few people are aware that that's what they're suffering from.
Gotta listen to me, honey, better count all your money, better know just where you stand. If you wanna be my date, well, you better get it straight. I'm a big-time shopping man. Yeah, I shop real fast. I buy things that don't last. I pay for stuff that I could get for free. And I'll do it till I die, 'cause I've figured out that life is just a one big shopping spree. Baby, come on. There's a whole lot of shopping going on. Woo! Yeah, let's go to the mall, come on. There's a whole lot of shopping going on. Get that money out of your savings account, come on. There's a whole lot of shopping going on. Woo!
Hi, I'm Scott Simon. Are you spending more now but enjoying it less? Millions of Americans apparently are. We're filling our lives with things and then telling public opinion pollsters and clergy and psychiatrists and friends that we feel empty inside. Never before, it seems, has so much meant so little to so many.
There's a universal feeling in this nation that we've become too materialistic, too greedy, too selfish, too self-absorbed, and that we need to bring back into balance the enduring values that have guided this country over generations.
Some call the affliction affluenza. Untreated, it can cause permanent discontent. Affluenza's costs and consequences for us, for our families and communities, for future generations, and the earth itself are immense, though often concealed.
We human beings, especially in this century, have been producing and consuming at a rate that far exceeds the ability of the planet to either absorb our pollution or replenish the stock.
It's going to hurt a bit.
Affluenza can be cured, but the virus is very contagious.
Buy now, pay later.
And it's been spreading for quite a while.
I want a Corvette. I want a Pontiac too.
Let's go all out and buy a Cadillac too.
I can hardly wait for this dream to come true.
Are you old enough to remember the 50s, that golden age of prosperity following the Second World War?
It's a great life, eh, Bob? And tomorrow will be even better for you and for all the people.
We felt richer then than we do now. A famous book at the time called America the Affluent Society.
A book whose title would be laughable today. People would reject it, even though we have actually, in terms of gross national product and so forth, more than twice as much. Everybody's home has got twice as much stuff in it.
Back in 1958, only 4% of American homes had dishwashers. Now more than half do. Less than 1% had color televisions. Now it's 97%. And there were no microwaves, VCRs, or personal computers.
Four-car garage is probably because of storage. You never have enough storage.
And so, you know, you never have enough garages.
Never enough. So much stuff, so little space. Even though the average new house has grown larger every decade. Now many new homes have 3-car garages, nearly 900 square feet of garage space alone, which is almost the size of an entire home in the 50s.
Oh, darling, it's going to be just perfect.
You're about to enter a beautiful, exciting, wonderful new world. The world of 1960. A wonderful new world of Fords.
In that gilded new world, hardly any new cars had air conditioning. Today, more than 90% do. Economy cars now offer more features than luxury cars did then.
Color's important. I don't worry too much about gas mileage at all. It's not something that I look at.
A lot of money.
Yes, it is.
Today's hottest selling cars are expensive, gas-hungry sport utility vehicles.
A lot of people, it's a status symbol, so they're willing to spend the $30,000 to $40,000 to drive one of these vehicles.
Yes, fun to see, fun to drive, fun to buy. The new Chevrolet.
Just as they did in the 50s, new cars still help us keep up with the Joneses. But these days, we find it more appealing to fly. We fly 25 times as much as we did then. Sometimes we fly just to shop.
Don't just stand there, give me your credit card.
Well, those East Coast stores really knock me out. They leave the West behind.
Potomac Mills attracts more visitors than any other site in Virginia. This shopping mall is such a popular tourist destination, airlines offer excursion flights here from distant cities. And where are you from?
Dallas area.
Potomac Mills is a discount supermall divided into what are euphemistically called neighborhoods.
Shopping malls have really become the centers of many communities. Children, as well as adults, see a shopping center as just the natural destination to fill a bored life.
70% of us visit malls each week, more than attend churches or synagogues. On average, we shop 6 hours a week and spend only 40 minutes playing with our children.
You shop, spend money, what else matters?
It's a happy-go-spending world, reflected in the windows of the suburban shopping centers where they go to buy.
By 1987, America had more shopping malls than high schools.
950 mugs that were...
Few mall shoppers come with any intention of purchasing a particular product. Most buy largely on impulse.
Oh, party snacks.
As this old sales training film suggests, that's no accident.
And here's that most important store decision of all, the impulse purchase. To make people hungry for as many things as possible. Hungry enough to buy a lot more than they planned to.
Buy the half-price dress. The cocktail party will come. Have you been to Potomac Mills this month?
It was an ingratiatingly clever ad campaign that first lured me to Potomac Mills Mall.
Shopping is therapy. Listen to that little voice in your head. Shop, 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 shop. You can buy happiness. Just don't pay retail for it.
But even wholesale, the price is higher than most of us seem able to afford. In fact, the percentage of Americans calling themselves very happy reached its highest point back in 1957.
The psychological reality of people is that almost our entire orientation to how we are doing is based on comparison. That's why, as an entire society grows, people don't feel any better because they're still in the same relative position. There's the sense of being on an endless treadmill and of never getting to where you thought you were going to get.
Still, we keep on increasing our consumption, partly by saving less and working more.
In our research, we hear the same refrain all the time from people. I have no life. I get up in the morning, daycare, elder care, a 20 or 40-minute commute to work. I have to work late. I get home at night, there's laundry, bills to pay, jam something into the microwave oven. I'm exhausted. I go to sleep, I wake up, the routine begins the next day all over again. This is what life has become in America.
Would Jesus be agenda-driven? I mean, would he carry a beeper? Can you imagine him getting beeped out of the Last Supper?
Richard Swenson, MD. He could be called an affluenza epidemiologist.
If you look at all the countries in the world that have the most prosperity,
They are the same countries that have the most stress.
Dr. Swenson is convinced that much of the pain his patients suffer is a result of what he calls possession overload.
It could be physical symptoms. You might have headaches, low back pain, hyperacidity, palpitations in the heart, unexplained aches and pains. It could be emotional problems. It could be like depression, or it could be anxiety, sleeplessness. You find that your life is being taken up by maintaining and caring for things instead of people. Everything I own owns me.
And we've had a lot of sickness this year, incredible amount of sickness.
Dr. Swenson says Americans in epidemic numbers have been pushed beyond their emotional, physical, and financial limits as they've chased a dream for more.
They have exhaustion and their relationships are vaporizing. They're surrounded by all kinds of fun toys, but the meaning has gone.
The secret to a good relationship can be found in new strawberry kiwi jello.
New improved Trident.
Giant slices.
Nourish the furniture you love.
The stuff dreams are made of.
By the age of 20, the average American has seen 1 million commercial messages.
APR 22.65% for best rate.
Ads are everywhere. If you get the feeling that there's a lot more advertising around than there was when you were a kid, it's not your imagination.
Advertising accounts for 2/3 of the space in our newspapers and 40% of our mail. America spends $1 billion a year on billboards alone.
The extreme is the billboard that was proposed for outer space that would project logos that would look about the size of the moon, visible to practically everybody on Earth.
You got a big future ahead of you, kid. You're going to be asked to endorse products.
On average, each of us will spend 1 full year of our lives watching TV commercials.
Advertising encourages us to meet non-material needs through material ends. It tells us to buy their product because we'll be loved, we'll be accepted. And also it tells us that we are not lovable and acceptable without buying their product.
And the bottom line is that it helps turn citizens into consumers.
Attention mall shoppers, there is a clearance at the shoe store.
The process begins in childhood.
There is a sale at the bookstore.
This new game helps whet children's appetites for shopping.
There is a clearance at the kitchen store.
Yes, my favorite store.
The winner is the one who buys the most stuff and gets back to the parking lot first. Saving isn't part of the strategy.
60% of all Americans say that our children are not just materialistic, they're very materialistic.
That's actually good news to some people. Children are the fastest growing segment of the consumer market.
And many major corporations are finding that the consumer lifestyle starts younger and younger. And if you wait to talk to a person about your product till they're 18 years of age, you probably won't capture them.
Obviously, somebody out there is afraid the youngsters might escape. From 1980 to 1995, the amount targeted to reach them rose from $100 million to $1 billion a year. It's paying off. So what'd you get, may we ask?
I got some Donna. Got some Donna Karen, some Gap jeans.
I got a Gap sweater. I'm on my way to get a jacket from American Eagle.
I'm about to get some shoes, and I got me this Donna Karen shirt.
I think that's good. I think that'll really get the message across. Yeah.
Jennifer Galos and Olivia Martin worry that today teenagers seek self-esteem in clothes and cars and are often left without a genuine sense of identity. While they were high school seniors in Redmond, Washington, Jenny and Olivia wrote a play called Barbie Get Real.
Hey, you're wearing new eyeshadow, aren't you? It looks great.
Thanks. So, what are our plans for today?
Well, first I thought we could go cruising around in your pink Corvette, and then I thought we could hit the mall.
Good idea.
Matt, say that like it's the best idea you've ever had. Be really excited. Let's go cruising.
Jenny and Olivia played Dazzle and Neon, Barbie dolls, whose shallow lives revolve around appearances and shopping. Midway through the play, Neon has second thoughts about her life.
What is wrong with me? I have everything. The right look, the right attitude, the right friends. But I still feel so empty.
Neon is finally making her transformation, her change. So don't let it affect your smile, but still show a lot of anger at her that she's made this outrageous change in her life, and it's hurting you because it was never about her as a person. It was about image. It was about being seen together.
Something happened to me today. I've been feeling so alone, and I don't feel comfortable.
Isn't there a shoe sale next week?
Why are you so afraid to have a real conversation with me? Don't you want to know more about me and who I really am?
I know who you are. You're Neon Barbie, and that's all I need to know.
There's more to me than where I go, who I'm with, and my accessories. At least I wish there was.
There is more to you than that. You're beautiful, too. You drive a great car. You live in a beautiful dream house, complete with your own Barbie bubbling spa. And you're dating me. What else is there?
I'm hollow inside.
Neon, get a hold of yourself. There are people here.
So, how was your date?
Olivia and Jenny began to question the American consumer way of life after a trip to Mexico.
Just the way they live down there is so harsh. They barely have enough food, enough clothes, but they were so giving.
And loving and happy people despite what they had. And you don't see that very many places in America.
The kids in our high school take everything for granted. They think that they deserve it, that they think that somehow they've earned it and the world owes it to them. And, they'll just take and they won't give anything back. And our society's just going to crumble if we don't have people that give.
After performing Barbie Get Real, Jenny and Olivia gave all the money they made to Habitat for Humanity, which builds housing for the poor. They won a national award for their play, but in the marketplace of ideas, they face stiff competition.
Kids love advertising. It's a gift. It's something they want. There's something to be said, by the way, about being there first and about branding children and owning them in that way.
It's called Kid Power, but it's really about selling things to kids.
In boys' advertising, it is an aggressive play pattern. It is.
At conferences like this, marketers discuss the latest strategies for reaching children.
An antisocial behavior in pursuit of a product is a good thing.
Experts have learned a little since the early days of marketing research.
Sociologists, psychologists, and students of behaviorism find in the teenage girl of today a stimulating and almost limitless field of study, but one in which they are lost without expert guidance.
We are endeavoring to evaluate the teenage American girl in terms of her likes and dislikes. What are teenage clothes? What are your group's social habits?
Over the course of the past 10 or 15 years, there's been a great boom in kids' research and kids' marketing. We're going into store aisles and watching them shop with their parents. We're going to their homes, sitting down in the kitchen, sitting in their bedrooms to see how they decorate their rooms. And we're giving them the opportunity or empowering them to be the experts and tell us how they feel.
So kids, get it now. Ask your parents to use their credit cards and call 1-800-BUY-MORE.
I love you, Dad. Can I have this toy?
No.
Oh, just a second. Mom, can I get this toy I saw on TV?
Gabe, we can't have everything we want.
You just don't want me to be happy. My name's Mr. Smith. That's right, Mr. Smith. It's 4851. You can't stop me. There's always Grandma.
Ads have always accompanied children's programs, but today's marketing strategies are not limited to television.
Children in this society are a cash crop to be harvested.
Alex Molnar is the author of Giving Kids the Business, the study of the commercial penetration of American schools.
Marketers are attempting to exploit this market very aggressively because schools represent one of the few relatively ad-free environments left in our culture. Parents would be shocked if they saw some of the materials that are sent to schools allegedly to help their children learn. They're nothing more than corporate come-ons.
School children discuss good and bad hair days with materials provided by Revlon. They study geothermal energy by eating Gushers fruit snacks.
It is laughable on its face that corporate executives who go around thumping the tub for world-class academic standards sign off on programs that would seriously propose that children should learn the history of Tootsie Rolls.
Kansas Governor Bill Graves, a Republican, will appoint someone to fill the vacancy maybe as early as next week.
In thousands of American schools, students must watch Channel 1, a daily news program.
And we'll have more Channel 1 news in a minute.
Along with the news comes commercials.
Whoa!
Companies pay up to $200,000 to place a single ad on Channel 1 because they're promised a captive audience of millions of children. Now, commercials are entering America's schools in other ways.
You're not on our bus!
At North Junior High School, they call this the 7-Up bus. It's one of several in the city of Colorado Springs which have ads painted boldly on their sides.
No one else had ever put ads on the sides of school buses. We were the first ones that had ever done it.
Colorado Springs is a prosperous, rapidly growing city, but for years the schools here have been victims of affluenza.
People tend to say, well, I'll buy a boat instead of giving money to the schools. As a matter of fact, the school levy has not passed here for capital since 1972 and for operations since 1969.
School Superintendent Kenneth Burnley turned to advertisers to increase revenues. At Wasson High School, most of the ads are for the snack foods that students are warned against in their health classes.
We are allowing things to creep in one by one that distract from learning. I think there is a great deal more emphasis by students on materialism. I'm afraid the way our nation's going, we are becoming preoccupied with material things at the expense of our children. Do you feel like if you're not wearing the latest, the best, that would hurt your self-esteem or you would be put down?
I do. It's like if you wear something generic and you're walking down the halls, you feel like everybody's looking at you. You notice everybody else wearing Nike and feeling stuff.
So it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Of course, many young Americans are adopting consumerism as their credo. So many of the adults they see are already in above their heads.
The wedding was so good we almost have it paid off.
And that's where the whole ball started rolling.
We started out thinking pretty much we could finance the world. And we tried, but didn't work.
The story of the Addams family of Colorado Springs is one that's become all too familiar throughout America.
18, I got a Mervyn's credit card. With that, I managed to get my Visa card. And then Cindy, she managed to get her Visa card. And we ended up with lots of Visa cards to begin with.
Keaton and Cindy Addams married in 1990 and soon began buying lots of things for their home, all on credit.
Furniture, couches, love seat, end table, coffee tables, entertainment center.
What's another $25 a month? I mean, that's the thought process we go through. And then we found ourselves making minimum payments all over the place to the point where we couldn't. And then when we started to get 2 months behind, 3 months behind, the arguments ensued. We started fighting.
They were $20,000 in debt.
We were screaming divorce. Finally, we just ended up reaching a breaking point. They called on the car.
So what'd they say?
It'd be $600.
In 90% of divorce cases, arguments about money play a prominent role. But Keaton and Cindy didn't get divorced, they got help when a debt collector referred them to consumer credit counseling.
Does he have something set up to repay this debt?
The clients apparently had financed some medical bills.
Can you have him call Chris at Consumer Credit Counseling?
These days, the phones are busy at the Consumer Credit Counseling Service, an international network with hundreds of offices throughout the United States.
When a person comes to Consumer Credit Counseling, the first thing we do is cut up the credit cards. That whole availability and ease of use of credit, I think, makes it real hard for people to remember that they're dealing with real money.
Americans possess more than 1 billion credit cards. Fewer than a third of us pay off our balances each month. Credit card debt tripled in the 1980s.
Not including real estate and mortgages, we're carrying over $1 trillion in debt.
In 1996, more than 1 million Americans declared personal bankruptcy, more than graduated from college.
Do you have money jitters? Ask the obliging Bank of America for a jar of soothing instant money, M-O-N-E-Y, in the form of a convenient personal loan.
When this commercial was made, Americans earned half as much but saved twice as much as they do now. Our personal savings rate is now 4%. By contrast, the Japanese saved 16% of their wages.
Okay,
Still, for Americans, the message to spend even more is incessant. Credit card offers keep coming, with enticements ranging from temporary low rates to frequent flyer miles.
Thank you. How are you?
Good. Well,
Each month, Cindy Adams deposits a check at Consumer Credit Counseling to pay off debts. She's learned a hard lesson.
It's okay not to have the newest thing, the latest style. Our home doesn't have to be tip-top 90s condition. Lets us focus on other things that are more important than stuff.
But Cindy and Keaton still feel caught when they think about their children.
Even Brandon at 3 is now going to pick out his 10 favorite things and, Mommy, why can't I have it? And that's just the way things are.
And that troubles Glenn Stanton of Focus on the Family.
The pressure that materialism is bringing to bear on the American family today is woefully underestimated, but it is critically important.
Focus on the Family. This is Kathy. May I help you?
Founded by Dr. James Dobson, whose radio program reaches millions, Focus on the Family is the largest Christian conservative organization in the United States. The political ideology here is free market capitalism, though not without reservations.
The market, in a very real sense, is hostile to the family. It needs to expand itself. It needs to bring in new consumers. And quite tragically, it brings in new consumers almost at any price. Do we go out after a sale, even pitting child against parent? We would contend that that is too far.
Strong families spend time together, but that's less common in our consumer society, even when parents are not working.
Come on, keep going, keep going.
Mom's upstairs watching a movie on the VCR. Dad is on the internet. Kids are downstairs playing video games. Everybody is connected to something outside of the home, even though they're physically within the home.
New Life Church is less than a mile from Focus on the Family. Sunday services here attract thousands of evangelical Christians.
The Bible does not say, buy a new Cadillac every year. It says, keep your lives free from the love of money and be content. Now, the message of our day in our society right now is always, always be discontent. I mean, we have tremendous prosperity in our country right now, and we've never probably had so much discontent.
Pastor Ted Haggard, like his neighbors at Focus on the Family, is a free enterprise conservative, but he too feels that consumerism is becoming a poor substitute for family.
The majority of people are rushing, trying to get a little bit more. And that's got to stop. Our kids need it, our wives need it, husbands need it, grandma and grandpa need it. Yes! It is not worth having another 1,000 square feet in your house if you lose the relationship with your wife. Or if your child turns 16 and you realize you never met him. Hey, don't eat the word.
With a little help, Pastor Ted prepares a sermon. For him, being conservative means conserving.
The whole idea of us using a thing and then throwing it away and getting another one, I think is affecting all of us as people. We start looking at other people and we say, if they don't give us pleasure, then they are disposable.
And I think it can't help but carry over into relationships with people that I'm dissatisfied with this. There's got to be somebody better out there.
I see that a lot in my practice where people will come in and say, well, they met someone at work, or, you know, our relationship started at work, and then eventually we divorced our spouses and we got together. And, you know, once the wrapping was off, then it wasn't as new and different and wonderful as it was in the very beginning when everyone was dressed up and powdered and looked perfect. So they go back to the company and find some other toy to play with.
Our community bonds also suffer. The Salvation Army reports difficulty finding volunteer bell ringers. Participation in civic organizations and activities has been declining over the past 20 years.
All our attention is being pulled in the wrong direction. In trying to run that rat race, we don't have the time to volunteer down at the soup kitchen, to volunteer at church, to go visit the old folks' home, to pay some time and attention to people who need us.
Affluenza affects people across all income barriers. People who have a lot but want more then feel themselves almost empty inside once they get more. And people who want for life's basics but still find themselves almost taunted by glittering embellishments. And in recent years, the gap between the two groups has been growing. In fact, the gap between rich and poor Americans is now the widest in any industrial nation.
Low-income people see it as an issue of inequity. How is it that I see all these people around me getting wealthier and wealthier, doing better and better, gaining more and more material goods, at a time when I'm falling farther and farther behind?
If you look carefully at the big consumer boom since the 1980s, I think one of the things you'll find is that it's fairly heavily concentrated in the upper part of the middle class and above.
Felicia Edwards didn't share in the boom. She and her two sons live in a tiny apartment in Hartford, Connecticut. Like millions of low-income Americans, Felicia works full-time and then some, but still struggles to provide for her children.
I try to teach them, you know, the dollar is hard to come by. Well, to me it is. Christmas rolled around, can you buy me this? But whatever I give them, they're fine with it. They don't ask another question. Way zero. Money's not all that important. I mean, we can't buy certain things, but still, we're happy. We're okay with it.
It's Rocco's Modern Life.
Yet Felicia knows her boys frequently feel deprived. Not long ago, one of them begged her for a pair of expensive sneakers.
They were $90. I had to explain to him first that I couldn't afford them, so he wasn't going to get them. But me and his aunt came to a decision that we was going to go half on them, and he got the sneakers.
In our poorest communities, the sense of deprivation is intense.
There was a fellow that I met, and he works with gangs, and I asked him, I said, you know, what's the one thing that you see that's causing a lot of these problems? Without skipping a beat, he said, greed and materialism. He said, these kids, they don't feel like their lives would be worth anything unless they had the hottest product that's being sold in the marketplace.
Soon children throughout the world may feel the same way.
The whole corporate system in the course of globalization is increasingly geared up to bring every country into the consumer society. And there's a very strong emphasis on trying to reach children, to reshape their values from the very beginning, to convince them that progress is defined by what they consume.
Each day, television exposes millions of people in the developing world to the consumer dream, and they are eager to be included. David Corton once believed they could and should. He's worked in Africa, Asia, and Central America for the Harvard Business School, the Ford Foundation, and the Agency for International Development.
My career was focused on training business executives to create the equivalent of our high consumption economies in countries throughout the world. Gradually I came to realize that that wasn't working, it couldn't work. Many people's lives were actually worse off. We were seeing the environment trashed, we were seeing the breakdown of cultures and the social fabric.
1/5 of the world's people live in abject poverty, dying slowly of hunger and disease. Billions of others also desperately need more material goods. Yet were they to consume as much as we do, the result could be an environmental crisis.
There is absolutely no way that everyone in the world can live at that standard of affluence, because the Earth's ecosystem simply will not stand it. Just imagine if every Chinese household had 2 cars.
As this car show in Beijing reveals, they're already on that road. Western products and advertising are pouring into developing countries.
It is creating a groundwork for an incredible global disaster.
Combined with a population explosion not expected to peak for decades, the consumption boom threatens to devour the world's reserves of oil and other resources within the lifetime of our grandchildren. We've set the example.
The American consumer. Each year you consume fantastic amounts of food, clothing, housing, amusements, appliances, and services of all kinds.
Since 1950, Americans alone have used more resources than everyone who ever lived before them. Each of us uses up 20 tons of basic raw materials annually. Only a small fraction gets recycled.
We are ruthlessly cutting down the world's forests, degrading our lands, destroying the climatic systems, all in the quest for money.
We Americans throw away 7 million cars a year, 2 million plastic bottles every hour, enough aluminum cans annually to make 6,000 DC-10 airliners. Our total yearly waste would fill a convoy of garbage trucks long enough to reach halfway to the moon. Our rivers and oceans are already clotted with pollution. Increased emissions of carbon dioxide and other gases accelerate global warming.
Affluenza, that disease of consumerism, is spreading around the world. So it's really critical that we here in North America begin to alter our patterns of consumption and set a better example for the rest of the world of what the good life really is, or none of us are going to have a good life.
According to historian David Schei, the idea that the good life is a simpler, less acquisitive life runs deep in our heritage.
Simplicity is an ancient, even a primordial ideal. The Greeks referred to it as the middle way, that midpoint between luxury and deprivation.
Give me neither poverty nor riches, reads the book of Proverbs. The New Testament is filled with warnings about the dangers of wealth.
So when the Puritans arrived in the New World, one of their major premises was their desire to try to create a Christian commonwealth that practiced simple living.
Waste not, want not, wrote Benjamin Franklin. In colonial America, habits of thrift persisted alongside desires for luxury. Even 19th century Americans still had more respect for thrift than for spendthrifts, and the word consumption meant something different then.
If you go back to Samuel Johnson's Dictionary of the English Language, to consume meant to exhaust, to pillage, to lay rent, to destroy. In fact, even in our grandparents' generation, when someone had tuberculosis, they called it consumption. So up until this century, to be a consumer was not to be a good thing. It was considered a bad thing.
One of the first harbingers of a change of heart was the department store.
Urban department stores came in during the 1880s, basically, to create the sort of place where people would go and kind of lose themselves and meanwhile spend their money.
By the 1890s, wealthy Americans proudly displayed the material signs of their success. Still, not everyone was impressed.
In the late 19th century, there was another major revival of American interest in simple living. Theodore Roosevelt was one of the foremost proponents of a simpler life for Americans during this period. Roosevelt was quite candid in saying that for all of his support for American capitalism, he feared that if it were allowed to develop unleashed, that it would eventually create a corrupt civilization.
As consumer goods began to roll in large quantities from American assembly lines, labor and religious leaders urged that productive new technologies be used to give people more free time instead of more possessions. But business executives feared a lag in consumer demand might send the whole economy crashing down. They claimed that human wants were insatiable and looked to psychology to stimulate spending.
Why feel low? Why be a little guy? Now you can be just as tall as your best girl. Slip into a pair of upsy-daisy shoes. They give you a lift.
After the Great Depression and World War II, a lift was just what Americans wanted. And business was eager to provide it, with a little help from the government.
The new automobiles stream from the factories. Fresh buying power floods into all the stores of every community. Prosperity greater than history has ever known.
Low-interest federal loans and spending on superhighways fueled the suburban housing boom. The expansion of credit made large consumer purchases easier, and the good life became the goods life.
We have the money to spend, and we want all the lovely smelling soaps, lotions, and glamour goo we can get with it. Our egos are best nourished by a well-placed investment in real luxury goods, what you might call discreetly conspicuous waste.
The immediate post-war period does represent a huge change in the kinds of attitudes that Americans have had about consumption.
Convenience was the new ideal, disposable the means. Use it once and throw it away. Families were encouraged to buy a new car every year. Marketers called it planned obsolescence. Products became obsolete because they were out of style, whether they still worked or not.
They were saying, the car that you had last year won't do anymore, and it won't do anymore because it doesn't look right. There's now a new car, and that's what we want to be driving.
Consumer society was triumphant, but not without critics. In the 1960s, a small but vocal counterculture called for a simpler way of life. Then in 1974, a nationwide oil shortage caused many people to wonder if we might run out of resources. And by 1979, even our president was questioning the American dream.
Too many of us now tend to worship self-indulgence and consumption.
Part of Jimmy Carter's failure was his lack of recognition of how deeply seated the high, wide, and handsome notion of economic growth and capital development had become in the modern American psyche.
Since Mr. Carter lost by a landslide, no presidential candidate has dared challenge the goal of infinite economic growth.
'Tis the gift to be simple, 'tis the gift to be free, 'tis the gift to come down where you ought to be.
Bill Clinton and Al Gore appreciated the sentiments contained in this old Shaker hymn, but they pledged to grow the economy faster than their opponents could.
And in Bob Dole and Jack Kemp's opinion, we should aim at doubling the size of the American economy in the next 15 years.
When Jack Kemp offered that opinion, his debate opponent, Vice President Gore, never questioned whether it would really be a good idea for Americans to consume twice as much as they do now. Now, I know what you're going to say. This won't hurt, right?
Wrong.
Ouch. I'm calling my lawyer. Shots sting, but they're supposed to help. Now, there is no shot for affluenza, but help is possible. And if you stay with us, we'll tell you about it after this message.
The average North American consumes 5 times more than a Mexican, 10 times more than a Chinese person, and 30 times more than a person from India. We are the most voracious consumers in the world.
If you've never seen this uncommercial before, it's not for lack of effort to get it on the air.
All the major networks in North America have rejected just about all of our television uncommercials.
That hasn't stopped these activists in Vancouver, British Columbia from producing them. They organize an annual event called Buy Nothing Day as a protest against consumer culture.
Consumerism and overconsumption is really the mother of all our environmental problems.
Kalle Lawson, who was a market researcher until a sudden change of heart, is the publisher of a magazine called Adbusters. It's filled with slick parodies of real ads. But his real dream is to get uncommercials on commercial television.
Take back your children.
I think that commercial television is the command center of our consumer culture.
Why are 9 out of 10 women dissatisfied with some aspect of their own bodies?
Many of the uncommercials are designed by refugees from the advertising industry.
Clandestinely, they come and they help us to come up with our environmental and other kind of messages which are trying to use television to change the world for the better. Invading the command center of consumerism with some very, very powerful antiviruses.
It's coming. The end of the age of the automobile.
Television executives continue to reject the ads, even though the producers are willing to pay for the airtime. Lawson is challenging the rejections in court. But even without television, these adbusters find ways to get their message out.
Hey, we'll put another one up here. Woohoo! Okay, one more.
This year, Buy Nothing Day has exploded. Not only are we in 8 countries around the world, but our phone is ringing off the hook, and it's becoming a truly international celebration of frugality and living lightly on the planet and of voluntary simplicity.
Oh, give with care, be aware, equality for all.
In Seattle, the Buy Nothing Day celebration included music by a group called the Raging Grannies and signs urging passers-by to cut up their credit cards. Several did.
Woo! All right, look at that card getting cut up. It feels so good. Here you go.
And though most shoppers ignored the protest, some found it thought-provoking.
This is a luxurious country. You don't really need it stuff. Like, we just buy stuff because we're in like a commercial society and stuff. I'm able to pass some of these out.
I feel that we're at the early stages of a second American Revolution to reconsider this consumption binge that we've been on for almost half a century now. It's going to keep on gathering momentum, and somewhere along the line, even the economists will come on board.
Consumption really is at the heart of the entire apparatus that we're looking at right now.
As a first step toward improving our quality of life, economists could change the way they measure progress. Critics say the current yardstick, growth of the gross domestic product, or GDP, is severely flawed.
As the economy that Americans experience gets worse, the GDP often portrays it as better.
Take a family going through divorce, for example.
First, they have costly legal bills. Then they establish two households instead of one household. Buying and spending goes up considerably, but meanwhile, what you have is family breakdown.
The more we pay the cost of affluenza, the healthier the GDP says we are.
Every time a forest falls, the GNP goes up. With every oil spill, the GNP goes up. Every time a new cancer patient is diagnosed, the GNP goes up.
We're amassing a large...
Ted Halstead and his colleagues have developed a different measurement of economic success, the GPI, or Genuine Progress Indicator.
The GPI takes into account 24 aspects of our economic lives that the GDP ignores. They start with, for example, the value of housework and volunteerism. We add for that. We subtract things like the cost of crime, the cost of car accidents, the cost of family breakdown.
While GDP continues to rise, the GPI has been falling since 1973.
Meaning that by this measure, the overall costs of increased economic activity are starting to outweigh the benefits. There's now a gnawing sense that we're passing on a world of social, environmental, and economic debt to our children.
Joe Dominguez would agree, and for more than 20 years, this former stock market analyst has been doing something about it.
When I was on Wall Street, I saw that people that had more money were not necessarily any happier. They had just as many problems as the folks that lived in my ghetto neighborhood where I grew up. So it began to dawn on me that money didn't buy happiness, a very simple finding.
So Joe tried frugality. He found he enjoyed life more, and he saved so much he was able to retire early and live on his interest. And he taught other people how to cut their spending. Vicki Robin was one of them.
I found that I needed to learn how to fix things, and I became fascinated with living life directly and developing my skills and capacities and ingenuity rather than just earning more and more money and throwing money at problems. We have so confused standard of living with quality of life.
Soon Vicki, too, was teaching workshops about using money wisely. In time, the workshops led to a popular audio cassette course, a charitable foundation, and a best-selling book called Your Money or Your Life.
It's not about making a killing. It's not about how to buy real estate with no money down or anything of that sort. It's simply how to handle your existing paycheck in a much more intelligent way than the way that you've been handling it.
That means carefully re-examining your spending habits and asking if what you buy is really worth the extra working hours it will cost you.
It's the stuff that our grandparents knew. You know, her grandma read the book before it came out. And after she read, the next day she came into us and said, "You're going to publish this? Everyone knows this. You're crazy." After only 3 months, my spouse and I are out of debt. We have become more at peace with money in our life. This was in Portland.
But thousands of readers have found the book to be a revelation. They follow its 9-step program and find themselves lowering their expenses by an average of 25%.
The correspondence that we've gotten indicates that people from every income bracket are using this program.
Obviously, the steps will be far more fruitful, far more effective for people in the lower income brackets. simply because they're the ones who need to know how to stretch a buck.
Oh, good point, Vicki, good. Good point, got that.
Joe Dominguez and Vicki Robin each live comfortably on $7,000 a year while donating all royalties to their foundation. Other Americans are finding their own ways to live better with less. One solution is co-housing. In Portland, Oregon, several families have come together to form the ongoing co-housing community.
Yeah.
Each family has its own home, but they grow food together, take care of each other's children, and often share meals. They buy groceries in bulk and lower their expenses in various ways. A recent study found that co-housing families use half the energy and produce only half as much waste as typical households. Members of the ongoing community have made a voluntary decision to live with fewer possessions. According to a 1995 poll, 86% of those Americans who have voluntarily cut back their consumption say they are happier as a result. Interest in voluntary simplicity now extends even to the corporate world.
My name's Lita, and I think my life is simply too complicated.
My life has become so chaotic, I have trouble sorting things out on a daily basis, and I really thought this might help.
If you take the simplicity course and you take it seriously, then you'll have more than enough time to do anything that's important to you.
When Dick Roy of the Northwest Earth Institute ran a workshop on voluntary simplicity at Nike's Portland headquarters, 100 people gave up their lunch hour to attend. Nearly all joined long-term study groups hoping to change their lives.
Study circles are beginning to develop, newsletters, magazines, internet resources on the computer, and so on, and that is now beginning to create a culture of simplicity, a culture of ecological living.
If trend watcher Gerald Salenti is right, it's a culture with growing appeal.
In our 17 years of trend tracking, never before have we seen an issue that is gaining such global acceptance as voluntary simplicity. In 1996, we estimate about 5% of the baby boom population are practicing a very strong form of voluntary simplicity. By the year 2000, we estimate that number is going to be up to 15%. They're finding a cure for affluenza. They get rid of their stress, and they say, you know, I like living like this a lot better. How did I live like that before?
And it's not just boomers. Salenti sees growing evidence that young Americans are also beginning to rebel against consumerism.
Today's teens and preteens are going to be tomorrow's revolutionaries. They're going to be very anti-materialistic.
These young activists hope he's right.
Just telling them, you're stupid, you're ugly, you're not popular, unless you buy this product. And it sickens me.
When Youth for Environmental Sanity members from around the world met recently, much of their discussion was about living simply and assuring a future for all generations to come. It need not be a future of deprivation. Studies suggest that the Earth could sustain a standard of living nearly as comfortable as our own for every human being on Earth. But that would demand social as well as personal change. It would mean investing in non-polluting, energy-efficient technologies, producing goods that last longer and require fewer resources, carefully reusing and recycling, rewarding frugality while penalizing waste, narrowing the gap between rich and poor, committing ourselves to economic stability instead of infinite expansion.
Your mouth feels clean, your throat refreshed, as cool and as clean as a breath of fresh air.
A generation ago, Americans watched ads like this and nobody laughed. Attitudes about smoking have certainly changed. Today, with growing evidence that overconsumption may also be hazardous, it's time perhaps for another attitude adjustment. And what might we gain? Stronger families and communities, shorter working hours and less stress, a better way of life. Think about it. Think about all the money we spend to fight various diseases. And then remember, affluenza is one malady we can cure by spending less money, not more. Thanks for being with us. I'm Scott Simon.
The preceding program was made possible by a grant from the Pew Charitable Trusts.